Vincent was on a plane to New York in 2 hours. He had a surprisingly easy time explaining it to his girlfriend, but she already knew he was going to a wedding. He supposed a funeral wasn't much of a difference. Vincent had time to think about the entire situation on the plane. It wasn't as if he could think of much else anyway. He truly didn't know what he was walking into or even why. The reasons for it all were blurry at best. But the circumstances behind it all made him feel guilty that he wasn't doing anything. So this, in some small way, was alleviating that guilt. He got into New York by noon and had many hours before the informal wake was slated to happen. He had never been to New York, so it was a bittersweet feeling when he did it now. A part of him thought to go to the cops and show them his weird text message that happened to happen before the disappearance. And another part of him thought it was stupid to waste the cops' time and his with his nonsense that wouldn't matter either way. Vincent decided to take the poor man's tour of the city and rode the train for hours, getting off at random stops, going in arbitrary directions. Around 5 was when he grew tired of going nowhere and decided to call Melody earlier and see what she was doing. With a text and an Uber ride, he met Melody in Manhattan about 7-ish. She had told him that her friends and family weren't meeting until 10 at the latest. Vincent had arrived at the sushi place he had picked arbitrarily and looked out of the window. He didn't know what she looked like and didn't bother asking. He saw a woman in a leopard print coat with fluffy white fur around the neck and hands and decided that was someone with California sensibilities. She moved frantically like she was late, even though there was no actual reason to rush. When she entered, she immediately spotted Vincent, having never seen him before, which meant she may have used the same deductive reasoning he did to spot her out of a crowd. She sat down and extended her hand. Vincent didn't hesitate in shaking. It felt like a blind date that ended in a funeral instead of sex. Even after they introduced themselves and they made the first awkward exhale, they realized they were starting their relationship at absolute zero. It may have been a challenge for some, but he had none of the social fluidity that it took to start a conversation purely from the ether. "So you and Melinda were like, together?" Melody said, struggling with finding the most accurate words. No, nothing like that. Our relationship was purely intellectual." "But you loved her enough to come down here and do this?" "I suppose I did. I guess. I don't know what is the basis for friendship. I don't know when it goes from you're some guy on the street to I travel the country for you." "Oh, it's weird, but it's true. I've had friends I've known all my life who wouldn't do what you did," Melody said while taking out a vape pen and taking a pull. Though the smoke dispersal was faint, Vincent could smell the weed. The waitress gave her a look of disapproval, but she looked back preemptively and blurted, "My sister died, okay?" The waitress didn't press the issue, and Vincent was mildly amused. Seeing that was so a Dustin move, to make you look like the asshole when she was in the wrong. "So, you never did any of that computer sex shit like dirty typing or whatever?" Vincent laughed. "Dirty typing? Fuck no. She was almost my sister. When we first met, I was 15, she was 22, so she never went there, and I never thought I could. Just like all things, timing means a lot." "Yes, it does," she said, tilting the pen Vincent's way. He put up his hand to politely decline. "So, how did you even know to look for Melinda?" Vincent looked up, temporarily thinking that his answer wouldn't make sense without the odd text, but realized he only made that connection much later. "I was going to come to the wedding, then I got no word from her. I looked her up on the internet and found a news blurb. That Trevor Kane dude must have been something if he got that much news coverage. I guess. I never met him. I bet you knew my sister better than me, really. We only talk on Facebook through memes anyhow. Seems par for the course for most adult relationships these days." Melody took a long pull of her pen as if her response came from a place of deep wisdom. "Two strangers mourn another stranger that they both loved." Vincent wanted to correct her and say she was missing, but she seemed to be more comfortable with dead than maybe alive. The two spoke for a while, but soon ran low on personal stories about Melinda and had to fill in the blanks with stories about themselves. They got by until it was time for them to all meet. Even though Melody's mother also went missing, she made no mention of her. Vincent was in no position to bring any of it up, so he let it lie. Melody and Vincent shared an Uber and walked down to the lower levels of a basement bar. They entered into a charged environment that had grief, but also merriment in the air, as thick as a tangible taste. Melody scanned the room for any familiar faces, while Vincent didn't even bother. If it were last month, he wouldn't have even been able to pull Melinda from the crowd. Melody seemed to have gotten a ping on her social radar and moved through the crowd. Vincent hovered close like a satellite. Melody hugged a dark-haired woman in her 30s, but it wasn't that warm. It was more a neutral hug, perfected amongst themselves. "Hey, it's Melody," said Melody. The woman's eyes flared in recognition that the hug didn't give. "This is Vincent, Melinda's friend from the internet." "Oh, you're a unicorn in and of itself. I didn't even know internet friends existed," she said while giving Vincent a limp-noodled handshake even for a woman. Vincent smiled. "I guess." "This is Abby, Melinda's roommate," Vincent interrupted. As oddly as it was, he knew quite a bit about her just on the time she spoke to Melinda while her mic was on. She had zero respect for games or gamers, judging from how casually she used to barge in on gaming sessions and talk as if Melinda was just sitting in front of the TV alone, up to nothing in particular. Vincent didn't want to say he didn't like her already, but that was sort of the truth. "Well, let me introduce you to everyone," Abby went on to say. There was a party of 6 sitting around a table like a hipster tribunal. Men and women who blended into the background until Abby made them real. She rattled off names that Vincent was only half remembering, though he told himself he would at least try to remember for the sake of Melinda's memory. But if it was any other reason, he wouldn't have bothered. He had realized how dismissive he was of people he didn't consider into what he was into until he had to force interaction with them. Melody went around the bar and rounded up some of the stragglers from her family that didn't know Melinda's friends, all sitting around in random locations like sleeper agents. Vincent opted to stick with Melody while she looked for people instead of awkwardly making small talk with a new set of strangers. Honestly started to question why he had came, but he thought about Lord Dustin Bunny and the battles they shared, and though imaginary, they had to count for something. Melody wrangled a plethora of random individuals that had no clear uniformity to it, different colors, shapes, styles, and ages. She connected the hipster console with 15 more people until they had more than just a few people. Melody introduced cousin this, auntie that, friend from this, but the name Wayne stuck with him. He was an older man in his 50s, in great shape, probably better than him, and very well dressed, definitely better than him. He could see why a young girl may decide to sidle up to him if this was the Wayne in question. Vincent thought to Melody's new boyfriend, Trevor Kane, who was 10 years older than her, so maybe she just screwed older when it came to attraction. Everyone mingled, and with each progressive drink, someone told a story about Melinda. It was an odd occurrence, but he had heard the other side of handfuls of these stories and finally put names to faces. Vincent wasn't a confident public speaker, so he didn't want to share the stories he had. Besides, most of his stories were gamer-centric, and he would have a hard time putting it in context for people who didn't game. It would be as tedious as someone explaining all the parts of a television and why they got a picture. Melinda told him any and everything about anyone. She used him. They used each other to vent when things in life were annoying them. Vincent stayed quiet and was content to stay that way, even though Melody asked if he had anything to share. When the stories died down, it turned into a group of pseudo-strangers drinking instead of strangers drinking, and most people stuck around. People trickled in and others trickled out. Everyone broke off into smaller groups as parties were wont to do. A hipster council member named Baxter spoke to him when Melody was off talking to a cousin she hadn't seen since childhood. Vincent had the urge to yell, "Stranger danger," when left alone, but it was something only Dustin would have got. "So, you're Cherry Checker, the guy Melinda has been hanging out with for the past 10 years. What is that even like?" Vincent paused, unsure if it was a rhetorical or actual question, but decided it was an honest question when he paused. "I never even talked about it as much as I have before today, but if I were to sum it up, it's all the best parts of a relationship. We're always on the same page. We are absolutely doing something we love, and we always have something to do, even if we don't have something to talk about. Honestly, if we're gonna be here, I didn't think real connections happened on the internet." Well, if I'm 100% honest, most of the time you're right, but it's a purity to it when you're not dealing face to face. "I'm Baxter. I knew Melinda since she moved here. I started out as her barista." Vincent snickered louder than he intended. Of course he was a barista, what else could he be? "Hey man, how long are you gonna be in town?" "Tonight, maybe. Tomorrow." "You know where you're staying? Kinda late to catch a train or a flight. If you want, you could stay on my couch for a few hours." Typically speaking, Vincent wouldn't go anywhere with people he didn't know, but in this case, it was the theme of his day. Baxter looked like a cross between Moby and a blonde Johnny Depp, so it wasn't like he was setting off warning bells. "Alright man, I'll crash for a bit," Vincent said. The night wore on, and only 3 of the council of hipsters remained, along with Melody. Vincent couldn't claim he had no fun, but he also couldn't say it was better than having a controller in his hand. He hugged Melody before they parted, but this time they did it as friends, not strangers. Baxter was true to his word, and his offer for a friendly couch stood. He had a beat-up yellow Gremlin, a car Vincent didn't think was made anymore. Baxter told Vincent he lived in some random place he didn't know, so he didn't bother to ask him to repeat it. The two made idle conversation about Netflix shows, grasping at straws for a crumb of common ground. Vincent noticed in the window the neighborhood getting shittier and shittier, like a time-lapse photo of urban decay. The shuddering gremlin stopped in front of a building so rickety he wasn't sure if it was abandoned or not. There were a host of unsavory characters wandering the street like hazards in a JRPG. This place wasn't like where he lived. The color of the poverty line seemed to encompass the whole of the crayon box. Maybe that was progressive. Vincent was starting to rethink the entire couch idea. If this was where Baxter lived, he'd be better off in the airport. Baxter got out of the car and Vincent was already forming a polite way to get out of this. The streets seemed to take notice the moment Vincent stepped out of the car, as one may a foreign animal introduced into a new ecosystem. "Hey, look man, I'm gonna just bounce, alright? I think I can manage a flight tonight. You don't have to go out of your way and give me a lift anywhere, I got it." "That's ridiculous, you don't have to do that. It may look shitty, but trust me, it's decked out. I got a 55-inch 4K TV, PS4, and Xbox One," said Baxter. Though that did alleviate some of his concern, he found it odd he didn't mention games once in the entirety of their conversation, and a gamer with 2 modern consoles usually never passed up the chance to talk shop. Vincent started to get the impression he wanted him to come up. Why, he did not know. "I want to thank you, but I'm gonna catch an Uber and get out of here," Vincent insisted. "You sure you want to wait out here? I mean, it's my neighborhood, but it's sketchy." Vincent didn't doubt it, but for some odd reason, his spidey senses were tingling around this guy. Vincent stuck his hand out for a shake. It almost felt as if Baxter wasn't going to accept it, but he begrudgingly did. "It was nice meeting you," Vincent said, though at this point it almost seemed like a half-truth. "Yeah, you too," Baxter said almost fakely. Vincent walked down the street tapping on his phone for the Uber app. He noticed Baxter didn't immediately go in his apartment. He began furiously texting. Vincent, on most occasions, wouldn't have paid attention, but everything Baxter did unnerved him. He glanced over his shoulder and in the distance saw 4 men running out of Baxter's apartment towards Baxter. Vincent stopped to look, thinking he may have been about to be mugged. But that notion was instantly dispelled when Baxter pointed an accusatory hand Vincent's direction. The 4 toughs broke out running Vincent's direction like attack dogs. Vincent somehow knew to run the moment the outstretched finger pointed him out like a Nazi collaborator selling out a Jewish man to the SS. Vincent turned the corner and sprinted for his life. He was in decent shape, but not so good hungry thugs couldn't run him down. He ran like a rabbit avoiding the hound. He didn't know where he was on top of running for his life. All the while, the chase barely elicited a reaction from the everyday street people. It only managed to pique their curiosity. Vincent cut down a gangway, feeling that if he at least broke line of sight, he could lose them through misdirection, if not sheer speed. Judging from the tepid reaction of the people, he imagined the toughs could beat him to death in the street and it wouldn't prompt a single call to 911. The thugs ganged, but he ran for his life. They ran for sport, which gave him an adrenaline boost that they wouldn't. Vincent cleared the gangway and hopped a small fence that exited to an alley. His pursuers were 15 seconds behind him, max. This is the moment he decided to make the most important decision of his life. There were 3 potential directions he could run: left down the alley, right, or straight ahead towards the next block through a gangway. If he went left or right, the pursuit continued until one side ran out of gas, but if he went straight, there was the chance they would assume they just temporarily broke in line of sight down the dark gangway, but there was another option. He could hide behind a dumpster. He didn't even have enough time to hop in one without them potentially hearing him, but he could hold up between some. This course was risky because all it would take is a rudimentary inspection to easily find him. But in the heat of the moment, with the chance of losing their victim in the wind, they may decide to make a snap decision as opposed to holding still, letting their food get further away. Vincent quickly and quietly crouched between a dumpster and garbage can. The thugs hopped the gate that was literally in arm's reach of him. He didn't breathe, but his heart beat so hard he would have sworn they could hear it. The 4 were a motley crew, his age, maybe younger. They stopped for a millisecond, the crucial moment that if they just searched, they'd find Vincent squatting, trembling like a scared rabbit. The moment felt like it would last forever, but it was over in seconds. One guy pointed one way, then the other, tapping one of the 4, and each sprinted a direction. The 4th man hung back and decided to check the immediate vicinity. Vincent knew he would be spotted. He absolutely knew it. The thug that hung back had 2 options. He would either turn around and automatically see him, or he would look up ahead of him. Vincent couldn't chance moving even to position himself better to sprint. He merely had to wait for the coin toss to happen. Would he look ahead, turn around? Look ahead, turn around. The thug began checking inside the garbage cans ahead of him as if he were an old hand at the seek and destroy game they played now. Vincent told himself to get up and snap to his feet because he knew he had to. The other men were a half a block down, scanning gangways. Vincent didn't have time to give the situation conscious thought. He tiptoed behind the thug that scoured for him, more quickly than cautiously. He had less than seconds to decide the course of his entire future. Each step narrowed his options on what to do. He could knock him. The thug slowly turned. Vincent summoned all his strength and 2-handed shoved the thug. The man fell into dumpsters and knocked over garbage cans like bowling pins. One of the distant thugs turned around and yelled to the others. Vincent didn't wait for them to formulate their plan. He broke back the way he came. When he emerged back onto the street, he ran up on the only car he could see coming down the road. He ran out in front of the headlights, daring the driver to hit him or stop. The car did stop, but the moment he attempted to run to the passenger side, the car inched impatiently as if eager to speed off. Vincent looked and saw the 4 thugs closing in and threw a Hail Mary. He hopped on top of the hood of the car, spread out as if doing a belly flop. "Drive!" Vincent yelled, his voice cracking in a plea. He could see an elderly black man in the car and could hear the profanity wafting from the cab. The door opened a crack until the driver saw 4 thugs charging his way. He yanked his door closed and stepped on the gas. Vincent held on, and the driver's eyes housed a measure of concern, but he moved quickly enough to outpace the 4 thugs. Vincent looked back with relief as their silhouettes shrank and disappeared in the horizon. After a few blocks, the driver got out and allowed him to ride shotgun. He told him most of the story, even more than he thought he would a stranger. But in his mind, he knew that their lives had no point of intersection, so there was no chance any of it would go past this car. His name was Max, and he was to go to the police with him, but at this point, he didn't want to go anywhere but home. On the drive to the nearest subway entrance, they workshopped and theorycrafted several doomsday scenarios. They both were convinced Baxter and the 4 were somehow connected to Melinda's disappearance, and somehow they got it in their head he had proof of the entire exchange. Maybe they double-backed and took Melinda's mom just on the assumption he was there. Max urged Vincent to go to the police, but even still, he wasn't sure if any of it would matter. The 2 men parted friends, having been through the trenches together. As Vincent walked down towards the subway, his phone rang. He fished it out of his pocket as if it were explosive. The ID window blinked unknown, and it was ominous and dark. Vincent thought very hard about not answering, but he wasn't exactly sure what he had to lose. In this moment, he had leaned completely towards going to the cops, but he realized that whoever they weren't sure if he knew anything. He accepted the call as if they could be anywhere. "Hello?" he said. There was a pause over the phone before he heard Melinda's voice say, "Hey, it's me." He didn't need to say any more. He knew her voice better than any other person on the planet. "Where are you?" Vincent asked with concern. "I'm safe. Don't worry about that." "How do I know they're not pointing a gun to your head right now?" There was a sigh over the phone. "True, that is what someone would say, right? I've got an idea. Name a place other than a police station, and I'll meet you there. It can be as public as you need it to be." Vincent thought for a moment. "Meet me at JFK Airport, luggage pickup number G," said Vincent confidently. "I'll be there ASAP." "Should I not call the cops?" "No, call them if you need to, but you just be there. I need to talk to you." I'll see you there," Vincent said, hanging up the phone. After the bombshell dropped, all Vincent could do was think the worst. He couldn't believe he was living out a clandestine cloak and dagger spy scenario. If she was this sure about things, a part of him trusted that Melinda was fine. Though the timing of the call made it seem that she must have had something to do with Baxter and the attack. Though, if she was in on it, wouldn't she know what to say after the butt dial? The idea that anyone could possibly kidnap or successfully kill someone, then escape an airport seemed nearly impossible to him, so he had no fear of danger. In the end, it was the curiosity that compelled him. Vincent waited by luggage for a good 10 minutes. He had been so on edge he wasn't keeping track of time anyways. He noticed the short woman in a baseball cap and sunglasses so huge Kanye West would have been jealous. He didn't know Melinda through a physical presence, so he had no clear clues to her outward mannerisms. The girl walked with her head down and beeline towards him. When she got into arm's reach, she lowered her shades to prove to him she was who she claimed. Vincent smiled, and so did she. They had never met, yet they were best friends. He reached his hand out, but midway through motioned for a hug. Then, midway through that, transitioned back to a shake. There was no protocol for such a thing as this. Melinda made it easy and hugged Vincent, coiling around him like a cobra. Vincent wanted to as well, so he didn't fight it. "Long time no see," Melinda said jokingly. Vincent nervously chuckled, then released the longer than usual hug. "Seems like we have a lot to talk about." "True, we do." "It's been a month. I'm sure your skills are garbage," Vincent said to break the ice. "Technically, no, they're not, and you need more than a month to get better than me," Vincent smiled. "So what happened?" he blurted. Melinda paused for a moment. "I see you didn't call the cops yet. This is good. We should get our story straight." "Story straight? What the fuck does that mean?" "It means that if you play your cards right, you won't have to work. A day in your life is what I'm talking about." "Again, what the fuck are you talking about?" "I was married to my husband, Trevor Kane." "I thought you were getting married in a month." "The ceremony was in a month. The marriage happened weeks ago on paper. When I resurface, I stand to gain over $1 billion. "So that means he's dead?" "Yeah, really dead." "You killed him?" "Technically, no. I got him killed." Vincent turned his head away in disbelief. "Look, he was an abusive asshole just like Wayne was. This time, I wasn't going to go through all that hardship and get nothing for it." Vincent turned to face Melinda. He knew every detail of her hellish ordeal at the hands of that man. "How does that have anything to do with the other thing?" Melinda thought. You honestly don't see what I did. A piece of shit taken down instead of victimizing me or anyone else." "So this is about you being a crusader for women's rights?" Vincent asked with a disapproving half smirk on his face. "No, but sort of. You don't think I should get anything out of putting up with that?" Now Vincent had to think, and maybe she should, but was that the appropriate reaction? There was much too much premeditation involved to be completely self-defense. "So what's with Baxter and those dudes? Why did they come at me? Why did you text me?" "I didn't text you. I hid Trevor's phone, but he asked for mine. Don't know why he called you. Maybe he was pressing buttons, maybe it was a butt dial. Baxter seemed to think you knew something, and I kept telling him you don't. He wasn't supposed to do that, but then again, I never thought you'd come all the way down here. Props. I guess I know who my real friends are. After you slipped away, he told me you were in New York, and he told me what you did, so I called you. Hope the fact I completely left myself to your mercy shows I didn't know he was going to do that." Vincent did believe her. There was no way she would have come alone if she didn't trust him. But then again, maybe she just knew he was that sort of sap. It didn't matter at the moment if she was planning something later. Unless she was planning something right now, it didn't matter to him. Not just yet. In the end, even with everything that happened to him, she didn't need to tell him any of this. She more than likely could have resurfaced eventually, got her money. And not only would he not actually have anything to convict her of, there was a real possibility he may just never hear about it anyway. He believed that she was trusting him, and he believed that if ever he had confessed to something like this to him, he may have trusted her enough to never utter it to a soul. Then again, it was all in theory. Even as tight as they were, the vector of each of their lives was background noise. Being face to face made everything they said to one another impactful and real. "So what about your mother? How did she factor into this?" Melinda shed a tear. "That's what happens when people that don't do crime. I left it up to. She could barely make it through the sentence." Vincent had a good idea what happened. She left the deed itself to Baxter and the others, and they took initiative. Vincent knew he didn't technically have anything to do with it, but he felt just as bad as if he did. An offhand comment was made by him, and someone died. "And these are the people you do crime with?" Melinda wiped away the tears and said, "Well, I would have done it with you." if you lived in the same state. Both of them smiled weakly. Don't worry about that, I'll take care of that. Vincent didn't like the sound of that. Or maybe he did. He was not opposed to unconventional justice. If you walk away from this and do nothing, I will give you millions. We can go back to how it was, except our rigs will be out of this world. I'm not asking you to do anything except be my friend and walk away. Vincent was not sure what to say or what to do for that matter. On the one hand, he may do this for someone he loved, but he wasn't sure if he could do it for her. He was unsure how strong a bond they could have.
What up with that? So, did he grab that bag or what? Did he ride off into the digital sunset or whatever? Pact is all about getting that bag, baby. Hey, man, seeing that I am an AI, all my friendships are sort of online, so, yeah. That's my boy right there. Give me that paper. Hey, what would you have done? You taking that bag or not? Anyway, you think on that, while Pact is out of here.